Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone here this evening, and we'll get right to work. So we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I don't ever remember who I asked before. Larry, you want to lead us tonight?
Sure. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item is approval of the agenda. Yes, Larry.
I'd like to request that under the consent agenda we pull finance B2A budget amendments and possibly put it under old business.
Okay. All right, I'll move that to old business number 6. Any other changes? Okay, is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
So moved as amended.
Made second, all in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you. Excuse me. We do school recognition of our students and teachers in our different public schools, and this month it is Zebulon Elementary School. So I don't believe we have either of them here this evening, and I understand that considering COVID. But I do want to read what was written, and then we have certificates for them. The student is J.C. Barnes. J.C. Barnes is a fun-loving, loyal, kind-hearted human. He treats others with respect, love, and humor. He goes out of his way to make sure other students in his class understand assignments and feel included in all activities. J.C. also treats himself with respect. He understands his value and works hard to achieve his goals. He perseveres through challenges and celebrates his successes. J.C. brings a light into our classroom each day. He inspires his teachers, administrators, and peers each and every day. So even though he's not here, I'd like to give him. The teacher is Sarah Street. Sarah Street is a hardworking teacher who set high expectations for her students. She believes every student can show growth and works hard to help her students see their potential. Ms. Street consistently exceeds expectations as measured by EVAS growth data, indicating that her students grow more than a year each academic year. Ms. Street serves on school leadership teams, MTSS implementation team, and she serves as an informal mentor to teachers throughout the building. I'm proud to nominate Ms. Sarah Street as the Zebulon Elementary Spotlight Teacher for October the 4th, 2021. And I'll just put them here. If you'll just see that they get them, I would appreciate that. Next, we have a proclamation. I hope I can see it to read it. It's mighty small. It's Community Planning Month proclamation. Whereas change is constant and affects all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, rural areas, and other places, and whereas the town and much of the region is growing at an unprecedented pace, and whereas community planning and plans can help manage this change in a way that provide better choices for how people work and live, and whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be meaningfully involved in making choices that determine the future of their community, and whereas the full benefits of planning requires public officials and citizens who understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation, and whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories, and whereas the American Planning Association endorses National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight how planning is essential to recovery and how planners can lead communities to equitable, resilient, and long-lasting recovery. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participations and dedication of the members of the planning commissions and other citizen planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the town of Zebulon. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by professional community and regional planners of the town of Zebulon, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals, now be it resolved that the month of October 2021 is hereby designated as Community Planning Month in the town of Zebulon in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. So I will entertain a motion to adopt.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Thank you.
Public comment. Do we have anybody this evening?
We did not.
Okay. For the record, though, and anybody watching, we do offer 3 minutes for anyone from the general public to come in and make comments to us. It's not an interchange time. It's just a chance for them to stand in front of us and say what they have to say. And we restrict that to a total of 15 minutes for all, inclusive of all speakers. So with no one here tonight, the only reason I'm saying that, so if you have something on your chest and you want to come in next month, you're welcome to do so. Okay, we have the first public hearing is 469 Green Pace Road, has to do with annexation. So I will open the public hearing and call for staff report.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. The first annexation public hearing tonight is, as you just stated, 469 Green Pace Road, Ordinance 2021-21. The applicant is Brian Richards. The property owner is Site Investments, LLC. The acreage is 2 acres, and the zoning on the property is light industrial conditional. So aerial view of the property. This site probably looks familiar because it was rezoned back in 2020 to light industrial conditional district. It was part of another larger piece of property to the adjacent north on Green Pace Road, south of the intersection with North Rendell Avenue. The subject site is contiguous to other corporate limits. You have light industrial conditional zoning to the adjacent north. You have heavy commercial to the adjacent south. This is looking south on Green Pace Road with a posted sign. Subject parcel, 2 acres in size. This is looking at that single-family home that has the heavy commercial zoning. And then here's your Green Pace Road, which is currently a 2-lane road. This annexation is consistent with 3 comprehensive plan policies. 1 is the utility connection, number 2, the fiscal impact, and then 3rd is priorities. Just to kind of give you an idea of the taxes we would collect if the property is annexed, it's just under $2,000 a year. And that concludes my presentation.
Questions from the board? Okay, anyone in the public that wishes to make comments? Okay, close the public hearing, and it will come up later in our agenda. So now I'll open public hearing for annexation 1817 Old US 264 Highway.
All right, this is ordinance 2021-24. The applicant is Tommy Perry. The property owner is Zebulon Outdoor Storage, LLC. Property address is 1817 Old US 264 Highway. Acreage right around 16 acres, and the zoning on the property is light industrial conditional. This parcel looks familiar because this was rezoned in 2020 to light industrial conditional district. You have the stadium to the southwest, the intersection of 64 and 39 to the northwest. This is a contiguous parcel. You have to the east and the west. Zoning on the properties, light industrial conditional. This is looking east, with the posted sign. Looking at the existing vegetation along the front of the parcel. This is the existing site. Another picture of the existing site. More existing vegetation along the front of the property. And this annexation is consistent with 2 comprehensive plan policies, economic development objectives, and then physical impact. And then to give you an idea of if it's incorporated, the taxes we would collect on the property is right around $3,700. And that concludes my presentation.
Okay, questions from the board? Any questions from the general public or comments? Okay, we will then close that public hearing. And again, it comes up later in our agenda. Okay, earlier we approved the amended agenda. Now I want to ask for adoption of the amended consent agenda.
So moved. As amended. Consent agenda.
Did I get a second on that?
Second.
Okay, sorry. All right, all in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, old business, planning, ordinance 2022-13, downtown building design.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the Board of Commissioners. As you may recall, at the joint public hearing a couple weeks ago, there were several text amendments that came before you. The first of which is a text amendment to regulate the appearance of downtown buildings, specifically when they're going to be modified. These regulations would be reviewed by staff, as opposed to having to go through a full technical review committee. It is specific to the downtown core zoning district, and it would really focus on the colors that are being chosen to make sure that it's in keeping with the character of the downtown. The intent is to prevent things like this, such as in Detroit, Michigan, where an art project spans several blocks, whereas some communities are actually focusing on colors to try to create something different as a tourism attraction. And even HGTV has kind of taken up the mantle by painting each of the different buildings a very bold color. Whereas with our downtown, the color palettes would be more neutral, still allowing for the painting of brick, but they would be consistent with the other character and design of the buildings. It would be a case-by-case review to make sure that the colors are not creating a substantial contrast as opposed to compatible. And additionally, it still would encourage the retaining of the original brick. The planning board did review this and recommended approval, finding that it was consistent with applicable sections of not only the UDO, but also the 2030 strategic plan and economic goal number 5 of the comprehensive land use plan. And that vote was a unanimous recommendation for approval. And I am available if you have any questions on this first text amendment.
I do.
Yes.
Under the financial analysis, it says, talks about regulations to establish a compatible color palette. Is there a specific color palette that's been chosen? For example, earth tones or neutral tones, or how is that palette going to be determined?
It will be determined based on the character and context of the surrounding buildings. Namely, one color may not work depending upon the colors next door. As an example, we would not want a tenant space to match identical color to the next tenant space because then they blend in together. It would be working with the applicant as opposed to creating an absolute no, you have to fit into this color palette. We want them to provide examples and possibilities of what they're looking for and then work with them to find one that would best suit the needs and the character of our downtown.
Thank you.
Other questions from any board member? Okay, what's your pleasure?
I move to approve ordinance 2022-13.
Second.
Motion made, second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. Motion carries. Thank you. Ordinance 2022-14.
The next of the text amendments is in regards to something that we noticed that was absent from our ordinance that really should have been there. Currently, art galleries are only used as a permitted or as an accessory use to other uses, whereas a community such as ours that has seen a progression towards interest in the arts in the past couple of years really should have this as a use that would be permitted by right. Not only the display of art, but also the creation of art, and making sure that's compatible with the surrounding uses. So the proposed text amendments are to create two new uses, art gallery and artisan studio. They would be included in the use table in section 4.2.3. And the real intent is to create environments such as this. Stroke of Genius Paint, Canvas, and Wine Studio in Waukesha, Wisconsin, where the community can come together and create art as well as sample wines. And it doesn't necessarily just have to be paint. Pottery is a great example of an artisan studio that works collaboratively with the community. The corner and artisan market in Flemington, Pennsylvania, not only sells art and art pieces, but they have rotating artists that come in to teach folks how to create the products that they're actually selling within the art gallery. Similar is sculpture studios, such as this one in Zanesville, Ohio. Individuals can come in and buy supplies to create their own sculptures, as well as take lessons on how to make sculptures. And it's not just limited to traditional media. There's different products that are artisan, such as artisan soaps. Eddie and Billy Soap Talks in San Francisco, California, as an example, allows for folks to come in and pick out different odors and smells and herbs and other items. Yeah, some people have to eat soap when they use choice words, I suppose. But it really creates an opportunity for these customizable boutique-type products, which is where the market trends are going, away from big box retailers into these more of artisan materials. And finally, another example of this is Bailey Builds out of Duluth, Minnesota. They actually use scrap lumber to create these tapestries, such as the one that's located behind them. In these situations, they use minor power tools, but they create these pieces of art that would otherwise end up in the landfill. The proposed regulations were reviewed by the planning board, and they unanimously recommended approval of the applicable sections, finding not only is it consistent with the UDO and the 2030 strategic plan, but also consistent with Goal 1 of the Economic Development chapter of the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. And once again, I'm available if you have any questions.
I have a question. In 4.3.5 under commercial uses, under E, it says measures shall be taken to minimize any potential noise, vibration, smell, or similar impacts onto neighboring buildings, lots, or uses. Can you please elaborate on the measures?
Yes. Let's say, for example, Bailey Builds. If they have a table saw or a power miter box, making sure that there's adequate insulation and as well as ventilation, not only to protect those inside the store, but also protect the quiet and peace on the neighboring businesses through insulation and other materials. Same thing with some of the soap companies and paint companies. There's chemicals that are being used there that produce certain odors, making sure that they have air ventilators that scrub the air within the building to make sure that it's not being exhausted into the neighboring buildings.
Now, are those measures listed anywhere, or is that just something that the planning department is going to bring into discussion when something like that, comes into fruition?
It would be a combination of the planning department as well as the building department.
Okay.
There are certain building codes for particular uses when there's particular chemicals introduced to make sure that they're being stored and used in a safe and efficient manner. That's not going to have a negative impact on not only those who are inside the building, but as well as the neighboring buildings.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from any board member? Okay,
I move to accept ordinance 2022-14.
Second.
Made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Ordinance 2022-15.
Okay, this next one is in regards to another new use classification that was brought about as some folks had approached us regarding concerns over an overabundance of particular uses congregating in downtown. It creates two new use classifications, pawn shops, and then vape tobacco and CBD shops. Both of these would be introduced in our use table in section 4.2.3, as well as creating use regulations, one of which is a separation distance. In reviewing this as in the locations within Zebulon compared to other municipalities, specifically within their downtown, we did find that Zebulon has an unusual concentration of these particular uses. The staff had recommended a 300-foot radius to be put not only around each of these uses to separate them from each other, but also separate them from churches, preschools, and a list of other uses that are consistent with the separations that we require for games of skill. The planning board did review this and unanimously recommended approval. However, they did recommend a modification of increasing that radius to 1,000 feet. One of the questions that came up was, what is this going to look like? It's actually would prohibit any of these uses from locating within our downtown. As I noted before, the existing uses would be grandfathered in and would be able to continue in operation in their current configurations, but they would not be allowed to expand into neighboring tenant spaces. Additionally, it would prohibit any new ones from coming in.
Question from any board member?
And some of that from the last slide, if you could go back to that, Michael, please. We're getting slightly out of the downtown proper and going into the periphery with what this currently looks like?
That's correct.
Okay, all right.
Other comments? Yes.
What's the approximate length of a city block?
There's approximately 300 feet.
300 feet.
I measured it at 4,
Oh, okay.
just a hair over 400. And I did it on computer, so I feel like it's accurate.
It probably is.
Yeah.
I think that I would like to see the proposed radius sit at 500 feet as opposed to 1,000 feet. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Did you make a motion to that effect?
I'd move to reduce the proposed radius from 1,000 feet to 500 feet in Ordinance 2022-15.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, now, is there any open or discussion or comments that anybody wants to make? Floor is open.
What would be the difference between 5 and 300?
Going back to this map, a 500-foot radius, such as around Olcott's preschool, would be put it right there, and it would just catch possibly just short of where the existing tobacco and vape shop would be. Those radiuses would overlap, but it would probably be just outside of that because this circle here is 1,000 feet.
And that's outside of the downtown core.
This
Barbie
radius-
Street and
Yeah,
all
this
that,
radius
yeah.
goes outside the downtown core, whereas a 500-foot would stay relatively close to the downtown.
Well, again, each block, and I was curious about this. I believe it was like 412 feet on average, but it's figure 400 is a block. So 2 blocks would be, of course, 800. So you would get about a block and a half away. Because the circles can overlap, but it's not where the circles overlap, it's the actual distance between the two. So just you couldn't put something else inside those circles.
That is correct.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Glenn? Does that help?
I guess it appears that the way, the 100, the 1,000, that would mean no more would be able to come in? No more vapes and,
Within, at least for the review that we did within our downtown, that is correct. There could potentially be other locations within the town of Zebulon that they would be permissible,
but just not downtown?
just not downtown.
And if I could add, what it does is if they vacate and do not reoccupy, then nothing could ever go down there.
Within 6 months, that is correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Anyone? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion? And the motion unanimous. Thank you. 500 it is. Okay, ordinance 2022-16.
Okay, this next one is in regards to auto-oriented businesses. Right now, our regulations do allow for quite a bit of flexibility in terms of the design. We do have some regulations regarding the location of drive-through windows and message boards, but outside of that, it really allows for an auto-dominate design, such as something like this could be permissible within our downtown. The proposed regulations would promote a mixed-use design that would allow for better adaptive reuse in the event that the use is changed. As I commented previously, Highland Park, California, when their Starbucks was built, it was recognized as the ugliest Starbucks in the country. And it was a little bit surprising considering Starbucks also has locations like this. This is obviously a very urban location that's inside of a mixed-use building corner frontage, but they also have standalone locations such as this that allow for 2 floors of seating. Personally, I'm a favor of Tim Hortons as opposed to Starbucks, and this location in Buffalo, New York, is in response to similar regulations that they put in place. In this situation, the developer was able to have the coffee shop on the first floor, and actually was far more profitable because it created a tenant space for an office on the second floor. It still has the full drive-through and all the other features of a typical Tim Hortons, but allows for better design, the representative of the direction that the city of Buffalo, New York wanted to go. McDonald's, very common drive-through restaurant, keeps changing their standard model, and right now this is their standard platform. They're notorious for going into communities and saying, no, you will build it like we have it. Well, unless it's like this, or like this, or like this. And my personal favorite, the one in Freeport, Maine, that was actually integrated into an old historic home, and they put on a comparable addition onto the back to house their kitchen, their drive-through, and everything else. They did fight the town of Freeport, Maine for several years, and then eventually gave in, built it. 2 years later, they posted a picture of this building on the front of their corporate magazine on how they were great corporate or neighborhood partners with the community. Nowadays, they do have some models that they're testing out, such as this. While it's the glass box concept, it technically does meet our mixed-use design standards, which these regulations would call for. Realistically, something like this would be more in keeping with what would be built, because if they took off the lettering and the decal on it, this building could be several different restaurants. Could also be offices, retail. It really allows for a great adaptive reuse as opposed to being a single-use entity. Shifting gears to vehicles, this is an example of the Firestone that was recently completed over in Knightdale. They too have regulations that require it to meet a mixed-use design standard. And while this isn't a true 2-story, the second floor spandrel glass gives the perception of it being a 2-story. Additionally, these drive-through or these drive-in bay doors over on this side were configured such that they'd be located in the least visible location possible. With the flow of traffic, there's another building that is comparable height that blocks at least the side of this building. So when you're driving by, you see this. The opposing traffic has a vegetation that helps to further screen that. But they made sure to locate those garage doors in the least visible location possible. which really changes the perception of it. However, in other locations within North Carolina, this location, Davidson, this is a very nice looking tire or auto service place. They have the pergolas above the door, but this is the back of the structure. This is what the front looks like. This is Woody's Auto Repair in Davidson. And as you can see, it is built to look like multiple tenant spaces. In the future, if Woody's goes out of business, this can be broken up into several different businesses. The second floor can be separated from the first floor. As you can see, it's full height within the interior, which creates opportunities for it to go beyond just a tire or auto service replace. Furthermore, the appearance of this sends a far different message than your typical tire change place. It says that they're not an auto-dominated community. That has a pedestrian character and feel to it. You have a sidewalk that goes right in front of it with landscaping. It really creates options and changes the perception. The planning board did review this at their meeting and unanimously recommended approval, finding that it's not only consistent with applicable sections of the UDO, but also economic development goal number 5, regulations, standards action 1, as well as several other parts of the comprehensive development plan, as well as the unified development ordinance.
Questions from the board? Okay, what's your pleasure?
Recommend ordinance 2022-16 TA-202201-D. Approval.
Okay, have a
Second.
motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, other comments or discussion? All in favor? And motion carries, thank you.
May I ask a question? On ordinance 2022-15, Shannon made the motion to change the footage, but did we make a motion to adopt the ordinance?
Yes, it was in the,
It was
in the
in
motion.
that?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay, all right, I just
okay.
missed it.
Hey, better to ask that question, right?
Better safe than sorry, you're right. Okay, next is ordinance 2022-17 and 2022-18, 19, and 20, all rolled into one since they're corrections, so I'll ask for staff report on that.
Okay, the first of which is a reduction in setbacks for industrial uses. As I previously mentioned, this is what a lot of folks thought of when you hear the word industrial. However, this is the modern day context of it. Because of the EPA and other regulations, it is a much cleaner process and much quieter process. Additionally, the buildings look a bit more like this as opposed to Bethlehem Steel or an oil refinery. The proposed regulations would change that required front yard setback from 50 feet to 25 feet in all 3 industrial zoning districts. The next, which is residential uses downtown, namely, we want residential uses on the upper floors and not the ground floor. We want to preserve that for pedestrian or commercial activities, such as retail, restaurants, those type of artisan studios, art galleries, those type of activities. And currently, the regulations would also allow for infill development within a downtown core to look something like this. The proposed regulations would specify where that residential is, as well as how it's designed. Auto dealer parking is the next correction. In all other situations, we do have limitations on the number of parking spaces in terms of a percentage of the total that are provided to really limit no more than 50% of the parking be between the front of the building and the road. Auto dealers typically, throughout America, look something like this. Whereas it doesn't have to. Edwards Chevy in Birmingham, Alabama, as well as Delaney Ford in Flushing, Michigan, both have very limited frontages. The Chevy dealership actually has the building up to the frontage and all of their display on the side, whereas the Ford dealership in Michigan has very limited frontage for display. Institutional design, currently we do not have regulations. So essentially, any of these regulations, including the fish, could technically be built within the town of Zebulon. As I mentioned previously, there's sometimes architects like to get very fancy with their designs, such as this church located just outside Kalamazoo, Michigan. This particular context, there was a great concern from the congregation to the point where they actually commissioned for an entirely new wing to operate as their primary entrance and everything else, because it was far more welcoming than the original architect's design to be off to the side. The proposed regulations would call for something more in keeping with this, or even this, for institutional structures. Mixed-use design within our downtown core was previously exempted. So technically, a building that looks something like this could be built on the theater property next to Pizza More. While it's a great-looking building in Philadelphia, so is that, once again in Philadelphia. The building on the left is more in keeping with the context, the character, and the feel that we're trying to have within our downtown. Multifamily design, once again within our downtown core, technically this building could be permitted. And as a context, a planning student that you may know, standing at the podium right now, lived in those windows right there his last year of school. And while it was convenient for me at that point in time, it's not what we want in our downtown. We want something more like this within our downtown for multifamily design. Once again, maintaining that commercial first floor space and allowing for residential on the upper floors. Finally, and this is Chief Perry's favorite topic, is making sure that we have parking in the appropriate locations to prevent situations like this. While this isn't our truck, this is representative of several situations that Chief Perry and his crew have had to face over the past couple of years. We do currently have requirements for guest parking. However, there's been some disagreement on where that parking could be located. The proposed regulations note that it has to be specifically in a marked on-street space or within a marked space in a HOA common area. That prevents situations like this where those spaces are put in a location that's going to create unfortunate congestion situations such as this. The last of the text amendment corrections are corrections to the spelling of point, as well as spelling in Zebulon within our definitions section. And that concludes all of these recommendations, or sorry, the planning board did recommend unanimously to approve all of the proposed corrections as drafted. And I'm available if you have any questions.
Questions from the board?
Section 4.3.5.g concerning the vehicle location standards. How would that affect a business such as J&M, where a significant amount of their vehicles are located out front? Is that going to be a big design change for them moving forward?
Only if they do a full scrape of the site and do a full reconstruction, in which case we would ask that the building be brought up closer to the road and some of the parking be put around side. All of these are UDO modifications, so there's provisions to protect existing activities and uses. So moving forward, those uses, if they don't change, they're not going to be subject to these text amendments tonight. It's only if they make substantial modifications, such as the Pizza Hut that scraped the site. It needed to be brought into compliance with the UDO standards.
Okay. And then section 5.3.1, the design standards, is that, I'm assuming, is just considered, is for the downtown corridor, mainly, and not all of Zebulon? Because quite frankly, I wouldn't mind a spaceship McDonald's. I like differences in architecture. I appreciate thinking outside the box.
Yeah, those design regulations would be in all zoning districts, but there are methods. If somebody wants to come in with a unique design, they could come before the Planning Board and Board of Commissioners to request what's it called? Conditional zoning.
Yeah.
Conditional zoning approval, which would allow this group to grant deviations in returns for alternative means of compliance. So if there's something really unique where it's outside of our base regulations, there are still avenues for folks to come in to create really great design for the future residents of Zebulon.
And that process is clearly outlined with what we have currently as far as what the steps are for them to go through to be able to present that.
That is correct. Chapter 2 outlines that process very clearly.
Okay.
Other questions? Okay,
I make a motion we adopt ordinance 2022-16, 2022-17,
No,
no,
start
17,
with 17.
18, 19, 20, for the, all of it.
Second.
Yeah, I got my
other
finger
comments
wrong.
or discussion? All in favor? And the motion carries. Okay, item 6 was moved from the consent agenda, ordinance 2022-3A. Larry, you asked for that.
I'd like to clarify that we'd like to authorize the expenditure of the money for the land purchase, but that the fire station design and the fire station PER be held and not any money spent without the board's approval.
Let me ask a question. I think the PDR has already been done, hasn't it?
It's been started, correct?
Yeah, so we're in process with that.
PER.
But that's the evaluation of the land, isn't it?
Right.
So that would be hand in hand with the purchase.
Okay, then I'll rephrase that to just the fire station design funds not be spent without board's approval.
Okay, all right. So we have ordinance 2022-3A with that amendment.
Second.
So we've got a motion and a second. Now I'll ask for any comments or questions. Hearing none. Bobby, did you have anything to say on that? Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. And the motion carries. Thank you. Okay, new business. Ordinance 2022-21, annexation request, 469 Green Pace Road.
Do we want to go right into the
You
consistency
do your
statement?
report and then we'll decide whether to do annex or not.
Okay. Parcels, 469 Green Pace Road, requesting an annexation. And then here's a consistency statement if you're ready to vote on the case. I do want to get some clarification on the ordinance number. Is it 2021-21 or is it?
2022-21 is what I
saw two
have.
numbers up there.
22-21 is what's on mine.
It's
22.
22. Okay, that's what I have.
Yeah, it's right in the agenda packet. Okay, is that it? Okay. What's your pleasure, folks?
I move to approve the annexation ordinance 2022-21.
Second.
Motion made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, ordinance 2022-22, 1817, old US 264.
Property address, 1817 Old US 264 Highway, requesting annexation, and I'll just state that the ordinance number is 2022-22.
I'll make a motion we adopt ordinance 2022 for the annexation of 1817 Old US 264 Highway.
Second.
Motion's made and second. Other comments or discussion? All in favor, raise your hand. All opposed? Okay. Motion passes. All right, board comments. Gee, Larry, start with you tonight. I'll work around that way.
Get vaccinated. As I said, month after month, it's not over with yet. the northeastern part of the country, which got the highest percentage of vaccinations, is still having a huge outbreak. And it's cold up there, so they're starting to spend more time indoors.
Right.
And it's starting to spread again, so please get vaccinated.
Okay. Annie? Beverly?
This coming Sunday is the Miss Zebulon pageant at Lewisburg College. If y'all need tickets, I have tickets. I think it's from 4 to 6, I think is the time. But if you have any questions, you can get up with me.
Okay, thank you.
It's
Shannon?
at 4 o'clock, I think.
Oh, I'm sorry. Were you through?
Yeah, I was just
Okay.
talking to you. Sorry.
Shannon?
So I have actually several exciting announcements tonight. The first is that basketball registration for our youth ends this week. So please make sure that you hop on to the Town of Zebulon Parks and Rec portal to sign your kids up. It's always a wonderful learning experience for your kids, and it gets them tired out before bedtime. Second, there's going to be a candidate forum put on jointly by the Women's Club and the Chamber of Commerce, held October 12th, beginning at 7 p.m. I'm sure that it's going to be streamed in some fashion, and if Joe, will we be able to, or someone will be able to find out how to get online? I would like to congratulate Daniel Baxley from Public Works on his promotion to crew leader. So I love seeing how the town of Zebulon encourages people to learn new skills and progress in their careers. So again, congratulations to Daniel Baxley. And finally, even though this event is not occurring in Zebulon, Artsplosure is happening in downtown Raleigh this weekend, and one of our very own, our Tower Hill traveler, Erica Parsons, is going to be participating in that event. And so if you happen to be down taking a look at all of the wonderful art that is out during Artsplosure, make sure that you stop by, because you'll be able to have a really intimate and awesome look at a lot of the art that she's created.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Glenn?
I'd just like to make everyone aware that October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and it has an impact personally on my life and most folks in here. And I would urge early detection, screening, and also education, because it's a disease that I think it affects everyone.
Okay, thank you. Okay, manager's report. Joe?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Commissioners. Just wanted to give a preview of your work session for October. It will be on Thursday, October 21st, and the start time is 6 o'clock. So just make sure that those are both changes to time and day from when we traditionally have the work session. As far as the topics, we'll continue your conversation on the financing of the North Arundel project. So last work session, we talked about 4 options. We'll come back with more details after having talked with NCDOT about that option 4. We did not talk about it. We had a full agenda last work session, so we rolled over the water allocation. The water allocation is just a strengthening of your conditional zoning tool for you to grant or not grant water allocation, for you to encourage or discourage the type of development that's before you. We had mentioned during the last budget that we were going to bring forward to you information from the compensation study. We're breaking those out into by department, and so the first presentation on that will be by the police department, so that will be a part of your October work session. And then finally, we're going to start bringing you some information related to economic development. We had talked to you also during the budget cycle about the building upfit grant for downtown, so we'll start to give you some more details on that. In short, it's going to follow the incentive policies that you all have already adopted, and so we'll bring that before you to get some discussion going amongst the board. And so that concludes my report.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have a closed session for North Carolina General Statutes 143-318.11A5 to instruct staff or negotiating agents concerning position to be taken on behalf of the town in negotiating the price and other material terms of the contract or proposed contract for the acquisition of real property by purchase, option, exchange, or lease. Is there a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Motion carries. Okay.